Kevin Hart removed a joke about Melania Trump from his Netflix roast. He had the power to do that. He exercised that power. He used it to protect the First Lady. But the George Floyd joke, the one that had the entire black community furious for 2 straight weeks, that one stayed in. That one made the final cut. That one streamed to millions of people worldwide with Kevin Hart's name attached to it as executive producer. And now Kevin Hart wants to go on The Breakfast Club and tell us he had no control over what happened. D.L. Hughley just called that out directly. And once you hear what he said, you are not going to be able to unhear it. Let's start with what Kevin actually said, because before we go in on him, we need to be fair. We need to hear his argument first. Kevin's position is simple. Tony Hinchcliffe told the George Floyd joke, not Kevin Hart. Kevin was sitting in the chair getting roasted. He didn't write it. He didn't deliver it. He didn't choose it. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. That's how roasts work. You sit there, people say wild things. That's the format. You agreed to it going in.
The George Floyd joke, it wasn't a tasteful joke to our culture, to our audience, but our audience that's watching the roast, if you're watching the roast, you get why they're doing it. You get why the racial humor is on the table. Like, it's not, I wasn't shocked. Like, that's what they do. Go look at the Tom Brady one. Like, that's what they do.
See, that's a very carefully constructed defense. Notice what Kevin did there. He acknowledged the joke wasn't tasteful. That's him showing he understands why people are upset. Then he immediately redirected Tony, said it, not me. Go be mad at Tony. And a lot of people accepted that. A lot of people moved on. But here's where Godfrey stopped the whole conversation. Godfrey's point isn't about who physically said the joke out loud. Godfrey's point is about something bigger. Kevin Hart was not just another comedian sitting in the crowd that night. Kevin Hart was attached to that production. His name was on it. He helped build the platform. He is listed as executive producer.
But Dr. Umar went in on like, broke it down, said Cheryl Underwood, it should have been a roast of Cheryl Underwood, because they went in on her so much. He was like, it was an embarrassment to him as a black woman. And he says, I love Regina Hall. Regina Hall did not laugh at half that shit. And he said, well, everybody should have gotten up and said, we're leaving. I said, you can't do that at a roast. Right. You're not forced.
That was his point too.
But you're not forced to do a roast.
No.
You're not forced.
Think about what that means. When the roast became a massive Netflix hit, Kevin got to be the producer. He got the business win. He got the credit. He got to say he put together one of the biggest comedy events of the year. But the moment the backlash hit, suddenly Kevin can't be the producer anymore. Suddenly he's just a guy in the chair. Suddenly he had no control over anything. You can't have it both ways. Either you're the executive producer or you're not. And if you are, then the decisions that production made are your decisions too. That's not an attack. That's just how producing works. Now, D.L. Hughley comes at this from a completely different direction. And this is where the conversation shifts from Kevin Hart specifically to something much larger. Because DL's question isn't why are people still talking about this joke 2 weeks later? DL's question is why are comedians still telling George Floyd?
I think it's ridiculous to blame a man for a joke he didn't tell. I also think that, and I've said before, I don't think that comedians should apologize for jokes. I think that that is a artistic expression, and I think, like I said before, that every single joke has a victim. Having said that, the question to me is not, and I've heard so often, why is it that we're still, after 2 weeks, we're talking about a George Floyd joke? My question is, why is it after 6 years you continue to tell them? And especially when being asked a question like that, why this joke has been such a lightning rod of controversy, being asked that by people who still talk about an election that they believe was stolen 6 years ago, or they still talk about things that they are angry about, and the timing of it and the length of time doesn't seem to matter then. I think, again, that a comedian should never answer or have to answer for a joke, and particularly a joke he didn't tell. But it's disingenuous to believe that joke wasn't designed to do exactly what it's doing now, and to have this level of controversy. I think that if you could ask the question, why after all this time we're still talking about that joke, about a joke about George Floyd, it is a fair question to ask, why after all this time are you still telling it? Because I think the reason it is told and the reason that people are continue to be angry about it are one and the same.
Sit with that for a second. George Floyd died in 2020. His death was filmed. The whole world watched it. People marched in every major city on the planet. Governments changed policies. Corporations issued statements. Kevin Hart himself attended the memorial. He stood there. He said the right thing. He showed up for that moment. And then 6 years later, his name is on a production where that same man's death becomes a punchline. And Kevin's defense is, I didn't tell the joke. DL is saying that's not the point. The point is the pattern. The same people who show up for the serious black moments, the memorials, the marches, the speeches keep finding ways to disappear when black pain becomes convenient for business. That's what the word performative.
It only jokes affect one side. And I was struck by when Kevin talked about how, you know, he was talking and he said, what was I supposed to do in the middle of a live broadcast and basically stop somebody from telling a joke? No. But the fact remains that 18 jokes were removed after the live feed. 18 of them were removed, including one that was told about Melania Trump. So if it is that you removed 18, because you very much could have jumped up and stopped somebody from telling a joke, but you and that production were able to take 18 jokes away out of the program so that people not seeing the live feed wouldn't see it. So if you could do that for them, why didn't this happen? And I suspect it is the same reason. People wanted ratings. People wanted controversy. And now you have it. But if you're asking why we are talking about it after 2 weeks, we're talking about a George Floyd joke, I just don't understand after 6 years and many roasts why you're still telling them.
Let's be very clear about what DL just said. 18 jokes were cut from the final Netflix version of that roast. 18. That means Kevin Hart, as executive producer, had editorial control over what stayed and what got removed. He exercised that control 18 separate times. One of those 18 jokes was about Melania Trump. That joke got cut. The George Floyd joke did not get cut. That's not an accident. That's a decision. Somebody sat in an editing room, looked at a joke about Melania Trump, and said, no, that one goes. And then looked at a joke about George Floyd and said that one stays. You tell me what that decision says about priorities. DL said it himself, if you could do it for them, why couldn't you do it for us? Now Godfrey takes it even further. And this part of the conversation is the part that I think people need to hear the most. Because Godfrey isn't just talking about Kevin Hart anymore. He's talking about a pattern that has existed in this industry and in this country for decades. And he uses one comparison that cuts through everything.
You brought to me that I didn't even think about was if you did Holocaust jokes, you get the smoke.
Right.
Whether or not it's funny, whether it's another Jew saying Holocaust, you get the smoke. And so people are careful about the things that they say because there's a backlash. The difference is you can say anything to black people about black people on any level, George Floyd, lynching, this, that, and there's no backlash. And there should be a backlash, whether or not, I agree with him when he's saying he did a production, this is what, you had the white boy on it, you know he was gonna do some racist shit, but even though it was your production, if you think you could just say things about black people and not get a backlash from black people, then that's our problem. That's so long that we've let it slide.
And I'm glad black people are angry at it because it lets me know we're waking up. Because if it was Asian people, they got on Shane Gillis for what he said. Yeah. If it's Latin, we as black people who are the butt of everybody's fucking jokes, finally, who black people have every right to be, that all of this shit that black folks have contributed to this fucking planet and we let shit slide. No, there should also be outrage and we should be like, no, we don't like that. The fact that they always looked at us as not human beings, they go, oh, get over it. Yeah. But you say something about the Jewish community and they're fucking crying on your ass. They're mad at you. They're good joke or not. You can't have this. Now you can't have a sitcom. You can't do this. No, the same energy should be towards us. Unless not, everyone should be get the fucking smoke. Yeah. Fuck that. Yeah. You know, but with black people, and it's our faults. We let it happen. I would rather it be like, nah, we boycotting your ass. I like that. We should have that awareness. People should be cautious not to say shit about us.
And if they're gonna do it, it should be like, well, is this okay?
Is this okay?
Does this cross the line?
Godfrey is not wrong. Think about what happens in this industry when someone makes a Holocaust joke. Doesn't matter if it was meant to be funny, doesn't matter if a Jewish comedian was the one who said it, the backlash is immediate. The consequences are real. Careers have ended over it. Sponsors pull out. Networks distance themselves. The whole machinery moves fast. Now think about what happened with the George Floyd joke. 2 weeks of conversation, some people upset. Kevin Hart goes on Breakfast Club to explain himself, and then the expectation is that everyone moves on. That asymmetry is the whole problem. And here's what makes it even more uncomfortable. Tony Hinchcliffe is not a comedian who accidentally crossed a line in the heat of the moment. This is someone who made a joke about Puerto Rico at a Trump rally. This is someone who has a documented history of this exact type of material. Nobody was surprised by what he said at that roast. And the people who put him on that stage knew exactly what they were getting. So the question isn't whether Tony Hinchcliffe is racist. Godfrey already answered that question directly. Yes, he is. The real question is, why did Kevin Hart give a known racist a platform at his production and then act confused when the racist said something racist? Here's what I want people to understand about this whole situation, because I think a lot of the conversation has been missing the actual point. This is not about whether Kevin Hart is a good person. It's not about whether he loves black people. It's not even really about one joke at one roast. This is about what happens when black celebrities reach a certain level of Hollywood power and what they choose to do with that power. Kevin Hart is one of the most successful comedians alive. He has real leverage, real relationships, real money. He is not someone who has to accept terms he doesn't agree with. He is not a new artist trying to get his first deal who has no choice but to go along with whatever the machine says. He had the power to remove 18 jokes. He used that power, and the choice of which jokes to remove and which ones to leave in tells you everything you need to know about who he is protecting when it really counts. Cat Williams said something about Kevin Hart a while back on Shannon Sharpe's show. People laughed at it. People dismissed it. People said Cat was being bitter. But look at this situation right now, and then go back and listen to what Cat said. And ask yourself honestly, was he lying? Because what this roast situation exposed is not that Kevin Hart is evil. What it exposed is exactly what Cat was describing. A man who has spent years carefully managing his proximity to power. A man who knows which rooms to be in and which jokes to leave on the cutting room floor. A man who attended George Floyd's memorial and then signed off on a production that turned that same man's death into a punchline, while personally making sure nothing that could upset the current administration made it to air. That is not a man who made a mistake. That is a man who made a choice. And D.L. Hughley, with one simple fact about 18 removed jokes, made sure the whole world understood exactly what that choice was. So here's where we land. Kevin Hart did not tell the George Floyd joke. That part is true. But Kevin Hart executive produced a show where that joke happened. Kevin Hart had the editorial power to remove jokes he found problematic and used it 18 times. Kevin Hart chose to remove a joke about Melania Trump. Kevin Hart chose to leave in the George Floyd joke. Those are not allegations. Those are facts. D.L. Hughley laid them out in order and let them speak for themselves. The real question now is what the black community does with this information. Godfrey already said what he thinks the same energy that gets applied when other communities get disrespected needs to start getting applied when black people get disrespected too. Whether that happens or not, that's on us. Let me know in the comments, do you think Kevin Hart made a conscious decision, or do you think this was just business? Because those two answers lead to very different conclusions about who Kevin Hart really is. I'll see you in the next one.